thing. And that just became his thing. As he bicycled those first, couple of blocks and around the city of Fort Collins and his neighborhood and everything, he began to rediscover hope. And it began to, didn't happen right away, I understand, but it just totally transformed him. And he became a very different person. So then he got this crazy idea. He said, all these people who like to bicycle, a lot of times they'll ride their bikes across the United States. And he says, I wonder if I could do a ride like that. And everybody said, well, Rich, come on, you gotta be crazy. you're 50, you're middle-aged, you're balding, and you're paralyzed from the chest down. You can't cycle across the United States. That would be impossible. And he said, well, I hear you, but you see, now I have hope, and hope changes what's possible. I mean, sorry, I get emotional to think about this, but so Rich Dixon, this guy who could not move his wheelchair 10 feet, has now hand cycled over 30,000 miles in that thing.
Wow.
Yeah, so well, he's crossed the country a couple different ways, everywhere he goes, he stops and talks to people about hope, what it means to have hope. And he's managed to raise something like $100,000 to feed these kids in New Delhi, India, which I think is pretty awesome, right?
Wow.
All right. Well, I first heard about Rich several years ago. I met him at a book signing, and I'm thinking, it really inspired me, but I got to thinking about his message, and I thought, I wonder if I could resurrect my dream of bicycling around the world. I mean, kids are out of the house now, and and I saw this window in my job, but I didn't necessarily need to do a lot. And I wondered if I could resurrect this dream of biking around the world. Well, it turns out that I could. So I got this idea. It didn't happen right away, but eventually I decided to combine two things that I was very passionate about: large space-based telescopes and bicycling. And I formed the James Webb Space Telescope World Bicycle Tour. And this was great. There was all kinds of enthusiasm about this. And as I began to realize that this thing may actually become a reality, I also began to view the future with an expectation of a positive outcome. I began to rediscover that hope in my own life, that where it was missing. And it was just great. There's so much enthusiasm. I got all manner of support. People at NASA were thrilled about it. People here at Ball Aerospace were very thrilled about it too. I got people that were willing to come with me on the ride. I got a website. I got bike jerseys. I got sponsors. All this stuff. And I also got one other thing, though. I got this tiny little pain right here in my chest whenever I start out on a ride. And, it couldn't have been very much, because remember, I was biking 200 miles a week at this point. And I figured I might as well figure out what it is. Well, one doctor led to another, and one test led to another. And come to find out, keep in mind, this is 6 weeks before I was going to depart on this ride. And I come to find out that the arteries in my heart were clogged beyond anyone's wildest imagination. Wow. My daughter was getting married in a few days. He said, look, you got to have surgery, and you can't wait, because if you do, you'll have a wedding funeral combo.
Wow.
And I never got off the table. I went straight from there to an ambulance to the hospital up in Loveland. And I'm thinking, oh, come on, really? You couldn't make irony up any better than this, right? You couldn't make this up. My dream was killed the first time because my wife had an accident and hurt her arm 6 weeks prior to departure, and now it's killed again because my own body has failed me 6 weeks prior to departure. I mean, you can't make irony up like this. But anyway, I didn't have any choice, right? I had to have the surgery. I mean, if I didn't have the surgery, I was going to die. I mean, it's not much of a decision to be made, and and it was frustrating because I basically felt good, but I didn't really when I reflected on it. And so had to have this surgery, and I guess I could show you guys the scar if you want to, but a surgeon took a circular saw and cut my chest in half.
Wow.
To give my heart a new blood supply and to save my life. And
how
he did.
long ago was this?
6 months.
Yeah, about 6 months.
Okay.
So he did save my life, but my dream died a second death.
Wow.
Boy, I tell you, I went from being just on top of the world to just about as low as I've ever been in my life. And in the book of Proverbs, they got this expression, this saying that pride goeth before a fall. You all heard that before, right? Boy, I get that one. Talking about just being as high as can be, and then he fell. So man, down I fell. Down I fell, and so did my dream. Because as I've been told by many people, some friends, a lot of doctors. When you're 55 years old and you have a quadruple bypass operation, you can't bicycle around the world because that would be impossible.
Bullshit.
Well, you know, this word impossible is a word that I've kind of grown to hate. And so I'm going to concentrate on what I know for certain, right? I know that even though this heart surgery was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, strangely, I didn't lose hope. Somehow that essential characteristic has remained throughout this. And hope changes what's possible. So I'm going to ride around the world anyway. You know, screw it. I'm going to do it. You know, and this is, I think, you know, I wouldn't say this with just any audience, but I will with you guys. You know, my heart's 100%, as near as I can tell. It's 100%. But I know that there's probably a dozen other things that might get you. You know, the least of which could be a truck, you know, run your direction. When it happens, the last thing I'm going to be thinking is, oh, I could have had fried chicken. You know? All that stuff I gave up for my heart, I could have had fried chicken. But if I die, I want you to know that there is a bottle of, one of the last bottles from the Vapor Distillery on the top shelf in Scott Knight's office. And I'd like you all to drink a toast to me. And if I don't, then I'll drink a toast with you when I get back. But I want you to know that if I do buy it on this, I die doing what I believe I was meant to do. And you know what? It's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. That's not a politically correct thing to say these days. But the truth is, some things are worth dying for. They are. And if you don't have something worth dying for, you have nothing to live for.
Wow.
So guys,
That's awesome.
I'm ready to go. Enjoy.
Scott, how much does your bike weigh?
I'm not going to weigh it.
Got any idea?
I bet it's close to 95 pounds.
Oh my.
Well, I'd like to add a couple of ounces to it.
Oh my goodness.
Roger's.
I'll take it. Thank you so much.
Tell everybody what it says.
It says hope. It's a stone.
Wow.
See it? Rich, thank you very much. So I want to put in a plug for Rich Dixon. Once a year, he takes a group of cyclists that ride from Cheyenne down to Raton Pass in something called the Front Range Freedom Tour. I don't know why there aren't 1,000 people riding on that ride with you. It's just the most amazing thing, you know. But it's to raise money for these kids in New Delhi, India, who live in ironically, a place called the Home of Hope. They've been rescued out of human trafficking, and otherwise they'd be living in a life of prostitution. But now they get an education and they have hope and all that. So they raise money to support their needs. And you know, I don't think you have to be a Christian to be on the ride. You just gotta have an open mind and want to help a bunch of group of kids that you're probably never gonna meet, you know. And it sounds like it's just a lot of fun. If I were here, I would do it. So check that out, the Front Range Freedom Tour, and you get to ride with Rich Dixon as he does his hand cycle. So, gee,
Wow.
I guess there's nothing else to say.
That was a great speech. It was awesome.
Well,
It's amazing.